This episode of Meet Your Neighbor is brought to you by Duncan Multimedia, serving the web development and computer-related needs of corporations, civic, and nonprofit organizations, large and small.
My name is Ashlee Unger, and I am an innkeeper / owner of a bed and breakfast here in Mineola, Texas. My husband and I joke all the time because we did not choose innkeeping. Innkeeping really chose us. It's really been a journey and something that's been a very winding path, so it's hard for me to just tell you how we became innkeepers. It's a really long story. But we did actively seek to be innkeepers, and we did actively seek to find a bed and breakfast to buy. And long story short, I was working at a hotel where we had some guests come in and really liked my restaurant recommendations. So we got to conversating, and they told me of this place because I told them I wanted to be an innkeeper. And we met the previous owners and interned underneath them and realized that it was really something we wanted to do. But couch surfing was our inspiration. We used to host guests in Dallas all the time. Anytime we traveled, we used it. And so this is how we really grew the love of hosting and entertaining. What I love most about innkeeping is the relationships that we build from day to day. We live in such a fast-paced world, and it's media-driven. It can get really impersonal, and I feel like that creates a lot of space between people. And so we're really lucky because here we can really connect and talk about deep things and have really interesting conversations, especially over breakfast. But just learning people's stories, learning why they're here, learning what they've gone through. I'm constantly inspired by it. And Brett and I truly never feel alone. We're always surrounded by amazing people. And during a time where this could be maybe something forgotten, we really embrace it. So we're really lucky. That's what we love most about innkeeping. So this is the Munzesheimer Manor Bed Breakfast. It was built in 1898 by Gustav Munzesheimer. And he built it for his wife for a wedding gift. And they lived here for about 5 years. And they left, and Senator Thomas moved in. He lived here for a couple of years, and he actually moved away because he said Mineola was just getting too city-like for him, so he had to move out to the country. So he lived here for a very short time. And after them, the Perrys moved in, and they were a really, really amazing family, had a great reputation, beautiful family, and they lived here for about 20 years through the 20s and Prohibition. Then after the Perrys moved out, the Cowans moved in, and they lived here the remaining 30 years that the house or the home had residents. They're still around. We just hosted their granddaughter, one of their granddaughters' descendants from the Cowans a few weeks ago. So there's a lot of history in this home. That's one of the reasons Brett and I were attracted to it, was that it had so much history already coming into it. So we preserve it. So the biggest reason I love living in Mineola is the intimacy. Coming from Dallas, I'm very, very used to, kind of staying to oneself or your own little bitty neighborhood. But what I love most about Mineola is that you can really build community here. You can really get to know a lot of people really fast. And they get to know you, and it's very personable. It's a lot like us hosting our guests. We grow to love and know them. They're always close. Mineola is such a cute town, and the people are amazing here. We really love the people. They're ambitious, they're intelligent, they're relaxed. They know what life is all about. But my favorite, when we first moved here, my favorite kind of memory was we had ordered something to go from Kitchens, and they left something out of our order. So Brett had brought it home, and we actually didn't even realize that it was left out before they were at our front door, knocking on the door saying, "You left your beans and rice," or whatever it was. And so I remember thinking, that would have never happened in this city. They don't even know who you are, but it's amazing that here, people reach out, they connect. So we love that connection. One of my best is probably my friendliness. I definitely got this from my mother. She is just the most nicest person I've ever known on this planet. And I think she really instilled that in me. I think by nature I might not have been as friendly, but It's definitely something that obviously makes us good hosts and makes us hospitable, so it really works out in my favor. I'd have to say my favorite one is bravery. I'm not much fearful of much. It can be a big downfall sometimes, but I really don't mind taking the plunge, and I really don't mind taking risks. Obviously, they have to be calculated, which I do. I have an amazing husband for that. He tells me when I'm doing something too crazy, but I really, I love being brave. It's fun. I did take a long trip by myself, which most people think that was really brave. I didn't really think twice about it. Backpacking wasn't really, it just didn't seem very dangerous to me. I don't know. I was never fearful of it, or traveling alone even. I took a 5-month backpacking trip to South America and Europe, and I actually had an 8-month backpacking trip planned, but I cut it short. It was really exhausting. I was couch surfing the whole way, and you're meeting a lot of people. It gets really intense. But I did find myself in a few sticky situations where I realized that I might have been a little too brave. And so one of them was in Rio de Janeiro. I've told most of my closest friends and family know this, but I was in Rio and I was staying with a couch surfer, and he had 5 French girls staying there, and none of them spoke English, or one of them spoke English, and she spoke Portuguese too. She was the only one that spoke Portuguese, so it kind of got around pretty easy, or I did at least, for my first kind of scarier city. They all said, hey, let's go to a football game, soccer, and then afterwards let's go to a favela. There's a samba school there, and they have this big party that lasts all night long, and we'll just stay all night and we'll take the bus back in the morning. I'm like, cool, sounds great. Totally something I would do. We went to the football game, we won, so everyone was really excited. We walked to the favela, and if any of you don't know what a favela is, it's like a ghetto. It's, a depressed area. Most people in Rio that are living in favelas, they make their own electricity, and they figure out their own water sources. It's pretty interesting, but they're basically like, shacks. This samba school was the most popular, so it attracted the rich people, the poor people, old people, young people. Every walks of life was there dancing all night long. That's what they do, is they dance. And anyhow, long story short, because I can be really wordy, we were there all night. We had a lot of fun. We didn't have much money. We didn't have enough money to take a cab, which is why we were taking the bus early that morning. And the samba school let out. Everyone left. And it turns out that the buses weren't running for another hour. And in Rio, if you're in a bad area, you don't stick around. You leave. In fact, when everyone was exiting, everyone was literally dashing to the next place. So we were stuck there. We didn't have any ride. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know if we should walk, which you don't walk by yourself in a group of girls at 5 a.m. in the morning in Rio. A drunk cab driver come over, and thank God that woman spoke Portuguese, because they were negotiating. He said, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be out here. You need to find a place. He was really scaring us. We really shouldn't have been there. And I'm watching everyone kind of enclosing on us. And it was probably one of the scariest moments of my life, because people were being robbed around me. It was kind of one of those situations that you think, how did I get here? What is going to happen? We ended up, the cab driver was so incredibly worried for us. He offered to drive us for free back to our place, which was across town, which was 40 minutes away. We took that drunk cab ride, which was the scariest cab ride of my life, and I had already been in Rio 3 weeks, so I knew the big roads. He was going down all the alleyways, and I had my hand on the door the whole time. I just knew I was going to be sold into some kind of trade. It was awful, but this is one of those moments where I saw the true kindness and gentleness in human nature. He did take us home for free, and he didn't have any other plans for us, and we got home safe. But I thought, I'll always have an exit plan next time. I learned a lot about that. Anyhow, that's one of the moments where my bravery really kind of bit me, or could have bitten me. I consider best advice that I've used the longest. Advice that I've always really understood. My dad had a lot of cute anecdotes growing up, little sayings. He was so colorful, and I learned a lot from these anecdotes. They really hit home for me. So one of my favorite pieces of advice, or I really should say anecdote, or comment was well, you really need to do this. Well, I can't, Dad. Can't never did nothing. He always said that. Can't never did nothing. And so I'd always rung, like every time I thought of the word can't, I thought can't never did nothing. So I always did. I never really felt and held back. I always thought, who cares? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. So I really love that he always said that. Another really good piece of advice that I really hit home with me, my ex-boyfriend's mom told me one time in high school. She said, Ashlee, there's always going to be prettier and better people than you, and there's always going to be uglier and worse off people than you. She was like, you just have to accept that. And so I really love that, because as of everyone else, I'm my worst critic, and I was always really hard on myself, and she used to tell me that, or that one time, and I just realized, be who you're going to be, because it doesn't matter. You're not trying to be better, and you're always going to be better, and you're always going to be worse. So I love those two pieces of advice. Another thing my dad used to always say is he lectured a lot, which I've really come to admire these days, but then I didn't. But he'd say, Ashlee, there's a line, and it's right here in the middle. And sometimes you're going to be over that line, and things are going to be too much, and you're going to be doing too much, and it's excess. But you just got to work yourself all the way back to that line. And then sometimes in life, you're going to get real low, and you're going to be down and out, and you're going to be, it's going to be less than what you want, but you always got to make yourself back to that line. And of course, he always taught balance. And I have to say, that's one thing that I'm always striving for. Constantly. A defining moment in my life, I've had a few that have really stood out, where it changed the direction of my life completely, or it was so profound that it had an impact on me forever. The first one was while I was in my travels, my backpacking travels. I'd reached Italy. I was really exhausted, and I started noticing signs, and some of you might not believe in these things, but I take very heavy to omens and feelings. I'm very, very an instinctual person. So on my travels, I realized that I was seeing signs to go home. I was seeing literal signs and graffiti. I was taking wrong bus rides on accident, ending up to places that I had planned on going but decided not to, getting more signs there about home. Home just kept coming up, and it really started making me nervous, because a part of me knew that I probably should go home, because I had the most amazing thing waiting for me, my husband, who's my husband now, but Brett's, he's been the most patient person in my life. He knew that I needed to do this, and he waited for me. He stuck it through, and I knew that I needed to go home to be with him. It was kind of one of those things where, who knows if I had gone the rest of my trip, what would have happened. So I had all these signs, and I remember feeling so overwhelmed after the last thing was I ran across some travelers, and they said something about home. The whole conversation was geared towards that, and it's just the way that the conversation went. I knew that I needed to act on it. So I called my mom, Janet, and I said, I don't know what to do, but I don't think I can go on. What do I do? And I remember bawling. Actually, I was kind of screaming hysterically on the phone, because I was so upset with myself. I wanted to continue on, but it was almost like I had a brick wall, and I felt like if I kept going, I was just going to keep hitting this wall. And so all my family has been so supportive, every single member of my family. But she told me, she said, come home immediately, get on the next plane. I don't care what you do, just make your way to the airport. So I did. I made my way to the airport immediately. I got the next flight out, which was actually the next morning, so I had to sleep in the airport. I got home, and it's funny, I probably would have never given much thought to it, other than I learned a lot. I knew I missed out on a lot, but I did learn a lot. But that my best friend and I were in Guatemala, the next year, which I would have been traveling. In fact, I would have been in Asia at that point. She decided, hey, you have some extra money left from your trip. Why don't we go to Guatemala, where my family's from, and we can backpack around there. So we did, and I'll never forget the day we got there, or the next morning, actually, we stayed with her family. The news had on the news was the tsunami that had hit Japan. And I remember feeling this feeling. I've never felt this feeling ever again. I don't know if I will. But it was almost like everything in my body dropped to like the pit of my stomach. And I realized that I was supposed to be in Japan woofing, which is an organic farming community, but you can work for other farms and stuff for food and shelter. Anyhow, I was supposed to be up north in the northern part of Japan farming at the very time the tsunami hit. Instead, I was in Guatemala with Myrna. That was a really profound moment in my life, because I think I kind of pieced together, you'll probably think I'm crazy, that I think I escaped death, or I escaped real bad danger from leaving on my trip early. And so that substantiates enough for me. So the next most profound thing was my best friend Myrna. She probably doesn't know how profound she's been in my life, but we did go on this backpacking trip to Guatemala, and for about a couple of weeks. And we were in the old town of Antigua, and we were staying in this adorable hostel. It was just so cute. We always stayed in hostels when we didn't couch surf, and we were on a terrace, and it was just us for breakfast. I love South American breakfast because they're like avocado and egg and like salsa and amazing things. So anyhow, we're really enjoying our breakfast, and I'm telling Myrna, I'm expressing to her, and I'll never forget this, telling her, I was really going to go to grad school for cultural anthropology, and I remember telling her, Myrna, I really don't think I want to do cultural anthropology. Like, here I am at 26, and I still don't think I'm in my path yet. I don't think I've found it, because the more I traveled, the more I realized that anthropology is really a profession that's changed. It used to be an exploration of understanding other cultures, and from my personal experience in my travels, I would have had a hard time writing about a culture without feeling like I was exploiting them in some way. So anyhow, I was having like a personal conflict with this profession at this point. And Myrna, like butter, just came out. She didn't even skip a beat, because I kind of like poured this whole thing out. And she said, well, you should start a hostel. Or you really should start a hostel. Like, you love hosting people through couchsurfing, because we had already been doing it for years. And, she said, you're already doing it. You just charge. And I remember thinking, that sounds so easy. But little did I know, Myrna doesn't realize that one line got my wheels turning. And I actually came home, and the very next week decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that I was going to own a hostel in Dallas. That was my original plan. And it evolved and changed, and we had lots of people helping us, and so we obviously didn't do the hostel idea, but that's where this whole thing started. So it was all my friend. She just had this intuitive thought that maybe that would be easier or better for me, and it was actually what I believe to be my true path in life. So none of our clocks tell time the right time in our house on purpose, because our tagline is where time stands still. And so we like for everyone to be confused as to what time it is, so that they can relax and they don't pay attention to it. I don't know if that works, because everyone uses their phones now, but